Hey, welcome once again to J.P.s World of Wrestling. Once again, I'm your man J.P. Now, last time it was just kind of an introductory of my channel, and but this time is going to be getting like right into it. And last time I said I was going to profile two wrestlers, but I think I've changed my mind. Instead, today I'm going to profile these, the WCW Galoob action figures. Now these came out, I think, around 1991 or so, and at the time, WCW was a little bit different than WWF in that the product was more like reality based, and it was presented more as a sport, and they didn't have a whole lot of like, characters per se like the WWF did. So today, I'm just going to show you all of my Galoobs, and so we'll start with these two. This is Lex Luger. This figure, I played with this figure, but honestly, the pose is not really very good for play. You can't really do any like actual punching, more like forearm shots or whatever. I mean, I still played with him. I used my imagination and I played with him and I had fun with it just fine. But yeah, that's Lex Luger. And Lex Luger, he was kind of a big, strong, muscular guy. He had a really good physique and everything, and that's Lex Luger. And then there's this guy. This is the Z-Man, Tom Zink. He had a WWF run, and he was in a tag team with Rick Martel called the Can-Am Connection. But then he went to WCW, and they turned him just into the Z-Man, and he was kind of like a high flyer, did a lot of drop kicks and a lot of moves like that. But this is a really good figure. This one got a lot of play. And so then we go to these guys, the Steiner brothers, Rick and Scott. Now, Rick Steiner later became the dog-faced gremlin. Woof, woof. And then this guy, Scott Steiner, later became Big Papa Pump. But these guys were, in my opinion, one of the best tag teams ever in wrestling. Just their moves were just devastating, and they could just pick a guy up with no problem, not any problem at all. But these guys got a lot of play. These were tag team champions more than one time in my fantasy federation. Steiner brothers. And now we come to a couple more. Brian Pillman and Ron Simmons. I'll start with Brian Pillman. Now, Brian Pillman, this figure's okay. I don't like that his hands are open. I would rather that his hands would have been closed. But Flying Brian Pillman was kind of a high flyer. He could also do some technical moves, but he wasn't like a real big guy compared to a lot of the guys he was wrestling at the time. But yeah, he would fly off the top rope. He would do a lot of high flying moves, aerial tactics. But I wish like these hands here would have been closed. But I still used him. I still played with him. Actually, no, I didn't. I lied. Actually, I didn't have Brian Pillman when I was younger. But had I had him, I still would have used him. That's what I meant to say. I still would have used him. I would have just done kind of open hand strikes to the head, But that's fine, Brian Pillman. So this is Ron Simmons. Ron Simmons. This is kind of the weak link in the Galoob series. And I say that because this arm is fused to his body. I had Ron Simmons when I was a kid. When I was younger, he didn't get a lot of play because there's not a whole lot you can do with this guy, because I always felt like he had his arm in a sling. But I mean, I like the guy Ron Simmons. Excuse me, I thought he was a really good wrestler, but this figure is not real good. And I'm sorry, Galoob, but that's not a good figure. And then we come to these two guys. These two guys, I didn't really have this one when I was a kid. Actually, when I was little, I didn't even really have this one. But my best friend Joe did. And he had this guy. This is Barry Horowitz. This is probably, from just a stance and pose standpoint, this is probably one of the greatest action figures ever. Just because there's so much you can do with this figure. You could punch, you could suplex, you could body slam. Great figure. And Barry Windham, also one of my favorite all-time WCW wrestlers. Yeah, that's a great figure. Barry Windham. And we come to this guy, the nearly 7-foot-tall monster, Sid Vicious. I didn't have this figure when I was a kid. This is one I acquired later on, but this is an awesome figure. This kind of profile is kind of the way the guy wrestled. He was just kind of a big guy. He did a lot of, forearms to the back and big boots, and he would pick a guy up and choke slam him, and his finishing move was a jackknife power bomb, although he just called it a power bomb. But that's, excuse me again, sorry, I just had breakfast. But that's Sid Vicious. Now, this time I'm only going to do one because we got two left after this, but Double A Arn Anderson. This was not my original Arn Anderson, but I definitely had Arn Anderson when I was a kid. And I wanted to share a story about how I got Arn Anderson. I was in my bedroom one time when I was a kid. I was playing with wrestlers, and my mother comes in with a brand new Arn Anderson still in the package. And she said, "Here, son, I was supposed to give you this on your birthday, or it was some occasion. But I think it was my birthday." And she never gave it to me. But she said, "Here it is." I'm like, "Oh, cool. I really wanted this one. This is the one I've been wanting." And she's like, yeah, I kind of knew that's the one you wanted." She didn't really. But bless her heart, my mom was awesome. And she came in, surprised me with Arn Anderson. Now, my original Arn Anderson action figure, one day the neighborhood kids were playing a game of kickball in the street. And my sister came in and asked if she could use my Arn Anderson action figures that they could use for third base. I thought, well, these guys are made of like vinyl or rubber and they can't break. Or sure, why not? So they ended up using it for the base, and his back ended up kind of skidding along the street. So I ended up with like some big nicks and stuff in his back. And I don't know whatever happened to that one, but this is Arn Anderson. And now I come to the crown jewel of my Galoob collection. We start off with Sting, the Stinger. This guy was probably the most popular guy in WCW. And this pose that he's in, is kind of reflective of the kind of wrestler he was. He was really intense. He would throw a guy into the turnbuckle and they'd look like, and he called all his fans, the little stingers. And I like Sting. Sting is one of those guys where someday along the line I wish I could meet this guy, because he just seems like a really nice guy and he's really cool. And I always liked the evolution of the character Sting, but that's Sting. Anybody that's a wrestling fan knows who this is. Woo! The Nature Boy Ric Flair. This action figure is probably one of the greatest action figures ever created in wrestling, because this pose, literally you could do every move that Ric Flair ever did with this action figure. With a chop to the chest, with the punch, the low blow, the strut, and or the back suplexes. I mean, this guy was WCW's biggest star. And he was kind of like their version of Hulk Hogan, but he was a completely different character than Hulk Hogan. Like I said, I watched WCW back in the day. It was a little bit contrasting style. I didn't know about it until later on, and I'll get into that. But this was WCW's top guy, Ric Flair. 16-time heavyweight champion of the world, the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. Well, that's going to do it for today. Thank you once again for joining me. This is JP's World of Wrestling. Now, if you're new here, go ahead and click the like button, click the subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.